to another episode of SaaS Stories. Today, I'm joined by female founder Natalie MacLees from NSquared. Very excited to hear about your journey and story today, Natalie. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell me, how did you get started in the world of tech and what led you to the creation of NSquared?
I sort of stumbled into the world of tech accidentally. I came from a graphic design background and I was doing like packaging and catalogs and trade show booths. And when the web came along, I got really excited about it. I built my first website in the mid 90s
Wow.
and I just really loved it. And the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to learn. And when I got my first job building a website for money, I could not believe how lucky I was to get paid to do something so fun. Um, over time, it became my career. And in over 20 years, I've had a whole bunch of different jobs, like everywhere from working in tiny little startups to working in agencies, building stuff for clients, to working in Fortune 100 Fortune 100 companies. Um, and then I tried to found my own agency with two partners in 2007, but we were not well matched and it failed pretty
Hmm.
spectacularly. And unfortunately, I lost the friendship with those two people, but I did learn some important lessons.
Yeah.
Uh, then I, yeah, I met Nathan at a tech meetup. Um, it would probably be about 12 years ago now. And we kept seeing each other at meetups and kind of gradually got to know each other. And when we'd known each other for a couple of years, we decided to try to do just a sample project together to see if we liked working together. And we met once a week for 4 hours at a coffee shop and built our first product together. And that did better than we ever expected it to. I mean, it wasn't a runaway success, but it paid our rent for many months. And we decided to do a second product together. And it was while we were kind of planning that we said, should we actually form an entity together? Like, should this actually become official? And that's how we got NSquared.
Amazing. It's so hard to find a good partner, I have to add. I'm lucky to have a co-founder in Hat Media, and I mean we've been together for 20 years running the business, and um yeah, I feel like it's good people are hard to find, and especially ones that kind of complement your skill sets. Do you find that you and Nathan have completely different skills that just complement each other?
We do. He is a pretty hardcore backend developer and is
Yeah.
super into APIs and databases and automation. And I am front end and just love CSS and JavaScript and UX and all of the other things. So we have complementary skills, but I think not in the traditional way of two founders where usually there's a developer and a marketing or salesperson. So
Mhm.
we
Yeah.
have had a little bit of challenge on that side of things.
Although no challenges with the code and the product, I'm assuming it's good to have two coders on the team.
Yeah, yeah, that part is easy.
So tell me a little bit about N Squared.
So we founded that officially we founded the company in 2017, but we started working together October 7th of 2014. So it'll be our 10-year anniversary next month
The
on October
anniversary.
7th. And we've got a team of 15 people now, and they're all fantastic. We're really happy with our team. We have developers, we have a team of developers, we have a data scientist and a director of business development and support team, customer support, and then an executive assistant.
Yeah. It sounds like you've scaled it to a really nice sweet spot of 15. Can I ask, who was your first hire and why did you decide on that?
The first hire was customer support because we both hated doing it and were overwhelmed by it and unable to write code because we were just constantly answering support
Hmm.
tickets.
Yeah,
And our
that
first
makes
hire
sense.
is still working with us.
Amazing. I think, yeah, I always wonder, with SaaS founders, what is your first hire? What is that? And do you regret that first hire, or do you like, has it benefited you? It sounds like in your case, it's been a massive benefit. But at what point do you think kind of sales and marketing comes into the mix? It sounds like you have the product team, which is you and Nathan, and then you've got someone servicing the clients, which I actually think is a very important element to get right before you start to scale. So who was the next hire?
The next hire was also customer support.
Okay.
And then very shortly after, we did add a marketing person. So that was
Yeah.
the third. That was the third.
Very interesting. Tell me,
Yeah.
you've got 20 years in the tech industry now. What have been some of the biggest challenges, and specifically maybe as a female founder that you found?
So like I said, I've had a whole bunch of different types of jobs in tech, and some workplaces were better than others.
Mhm.
Um, some of them were downright terrible to work at as a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think like from strictly from a gender point of view, I think probably becoming a founder has been one of the easiest things that I've done. And I
Mm.
think part of the reason that might be true is because we are bootstrapped and we have not raised venture capital, which I know can sometimes be problematic for women founders, that
Yeah.
there's, some bias and discrimination in that process. But because we have not gone through that, we haven't had that issue. And I would say probably the only thing that I've really struggled with as a woman founder compared to my partner Nathan is finding mentorship has been a little bit more challenging for me than for him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So, am I right in assuming that female founders generally have a harder time securing funding for their businesses?
Yeah, they do. There's just a lot of like assumptions. I actually had a call just this past week where the person assumed that Nathan was the developer and I was like a marketing person, right?
Of
Just a lot
course.
of assumptions around how capable someone is just based on their
Yeah.
gender, just old-fashioned things still hanging around.
What? Women can code?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. What, I mean, you've bootstrapped, which is amazing. I think that's kind of the ultimate goal. What have been some of the most important lessons that you've learned from bootstrapping?
Oh, okay. So we like to use the term scrappy, that we have learned to become scrappy, which just means that we make super efficient use of our time. We try to do a lot with a little, and we are all happy to wear multiple hats and contribute in multiple ways. So everyone on our team is happy to contribute in multiple ways. And one thing that you won't hear people saying, I think ever inside of NSquared, is that's not my job.
Mm,
People are always happy to pitch in. Um, we have learned to be super focused on our end user because that is where all of the money to run the company is coming
that's right.
from nowhere else. So we listen for feedback and really try to deeply understand the problems that we're solving and how we're helping people. And we really strive to offer just top tier, amazing customer support for people so that we have a good relationship with all of our customers. And then I think we just both like really being in control and being able to set our own long-term goals and steer the team on our own. And if we can just make sure everybody on the team is clear on where we're going and how they're going to contribute to getting there, then everybody's contributing to our joint success.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like you have to be extra focused and just work just a little bit extra with extra flexibility and agility, I suppose. Do you think that, say you'd gone back in time and you were offered the opportunity to get funding, would you have taken it, or would you have still continued down the bootstrap route?
Um, course, it's really hard to say for sure, but I think we probably would have continued down the bootstrap route. For Nathan and I are in agreement, which is on this, which is a good
That
reason
always helps.
that we're partners. Neither one of like we're not in this to make an exit. We're not in this to build an enormous company. We have agreed on a cap of 20 for our team ever. And we just want a company that we can run and support amazing people who want to build something great and provide a space for them to do that and a positive, supportive work environment. And that's, I think if we were taking funding, it would be really hard to maintain that vision that we have.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And what made you settle on 20 as like the key number of employees to manage? I mean, God, I find it hard to manage less than that, let alone 20, but what's kind of the thinking behind 20? Is there like a math formula I'm not aware of?
There is not a formula. That is a gut instinct
Yeah,
of what we think is the maximum people that we could realistically support in the way that we want to in a company. So the biggest we've ever been is 16. And I think we could add a couple of more and still keep it going. So I think 20 is about right, but we'll see. We might adjust it as we go along.
yeah. Things always change. Tell me a little bit about accessibility. That seems to be a focus for you. I just want to learn more about the key components of that and what's your approach at NSquared?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways to approach accessibility. For me, and what I am trying to instill and communicate to my team is that it's just a core value for me to ensure equal access to everyone to information, products, and services, regardless of what device they might happen to be using, regardless of what their capacity is as a person. And that is definitely one way to think about things, that equal access to information is a civil right, and we're just honoring people's rights to have access to things. You can also think about it in some other ways, that you can expand and have a larger market when you have an accessible product, that accessible products have better SEO, they have better user experience, right? So there's lots of benefits from that point of view. It could be a good differentiator in the marketplace kind of thing. And then, of course, the negative side is that you want to avoid being sued because your product isn't accessible to somebody. So to meet legal requirements. And more countries around the world are passing laws requiring web services and mobile apps and things like
Right.
that to be accessible. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love that mission that you're on. I think that's very cool.
Thank you.
It's amazing. It's what kind of some of the other passions that drive N squared forward.
I think for Nathan, it's automation,
Yeah,
which becomes very important when you're a small team trying to do a lot. So we do have
absolutely.
some very nice automations that allow our small team to accomplish way more than they would otherwise. So anytime anybody is doing anything kind of repetitive, we will find a way to automate that away from them. So
Yeah,
any job that we can
definitely.
give to a robot, we do.
Oh, absolutely. Use AI for that. And I mean, having two coders on the team definitely helps with creating automation capabilities. You've mentioned Nathan a few times. I feel like you guys have a lovely relationship. It's so good to hear. And I think from what I've heard from you as well, it sounds like there's been, maybe some challenges with previous partnerships. I just want to get your thoughts, having been through both sides of the coin, what advice would you have for people looking to find strong partnerships or a strong co-founder in their business?
Yeah, I think Nathan and I are really lucky. We get along really well. One of our good friends says our relationship is very sibling-like.
That helps.
It does. I think, we moved into having our partnership slowly. We worked together for 3 years before we officially became an entity. So we definitely took our time because we had both been burned before with trying to form partnerships with anybody. But I think you have to find somebody that you want to work with for the next, 10, 15, 20 years. And I think, especially when you're talking about a bootstrapped company, you have to find like someone not only that you're willing to work with, but someone you want to split your paycheck with, no matter how small it is, every month. Like, that you have to feel comfortable doing that and still feel like that's fair. And you
Mm.
also have to be able to be honest with one another, because if you have a personal life situation going on or a health situation going on, that is going to impact the business, and you have to be able to be open with one another um, about those things that are going on, and then to make room for each other to deal with those things. Um, I actually just recently, like a few weeks ago, heard Elizabeth Kraft and Sarah Fain, who are two like screenwriters that are a
Yeah.
team together, on a podcast. And they said that for them, their advice for partners, and it really resonated with me, was that you have to have the same level of ambition. That was for them the most important thing, because then you're willing to make the same sacrifices. And I feel like I understand that so well, because I feel like that is what was off with my partners before. We were a complete mismatch on levels of ambition. So while I was willing to work, we were all working full-time jobs and trying to start something on the side. And while I was willing to give up everything to do that, they were constantly saying, oh no, I've got a birthday party to go to. I've got,
Mm.
there's some kind of marathon on TV I've got to watch. They were not willing to make any of those kinds of sacrifices. And I think that's where things really went off the rails.
Yeah, that's actually such good advice. I never thought of it that way. I was always thinking like co-founders, it's good for them to complement each other's skills. It's good for them to agree on like specific things about the business, but same ambitious levels. That's absolutely, it's so true, isn't it? And I think also um I think same values in terms of, okay, how do we want to treat our people? If we want to scale really fast, that's going to be a challenge. So do we want to kind of take it a step back just to make sure that we're scaling at a good rate and our customers are getting serviced, to a degree that we're happy with. So yeah, that's really good advice, actually.
Yeah, I was really impressed with it. So I had to say their names and give them credit,
Yeah,
because I think
absolutely.
that was great.
I'll go listen to that after this. Um, Now, you're a team of 15 at the moment, possibly getting to 20 soon over the next couple of years. And
Yeah,
you're a remote team, is that right?
we are 100% remote. Yes.
Amazing. How do you keep the team fully motivated and aligned? How do you create culture? Yeah, I would really struggle with that, to be honest. So keen to hear your tips on that.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I just love the team that we have. Like, every single person on the team is wonderful. And how we have done that, we roughly run our business on Gino Wickman's EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So we've
Yeah.
taken that, adapted it a little bit because it wasn't a perfect fit for us. But one of the exercises that you do as part of setting that up is you make a list of like just a handful of values that you have as a company. So we have our list of 10 things, and we use that list to hire, to evaluate people, and to figure out, like, is this person a fit for our team? And I can't take any credit for that because it came directly from EOS, but it has worked out fantastically. That we will sit down after we're interviewing a new person, we will sit down and go through the list and just say, do we think this person meets these 10 things, or most of them at least, right? Because nobody's going to be a perfect fit. And that's been great. We have, as part of that system, we have 10-year, 3-year, and 1-year goals that are communicated out to the team. And we have big quarterly planning session where we figure out, how are we going to work toward those 1, 3, and 10-year goals this quarter? And how is everybody on the team going to contribute toward that? And then we have a little once a week meeting. Everybody meets with their manager to kind of go over what are we doing this week. And we also have a big team meeting once a week. So we all get together for about an hour once a week, the whole team. And we have had just really good success, I think, with all of those things in place. It's just enough. It's hard to strike a balance, I think, with a remote team because you don't want to micromanage. I have no desire to have like software that takes a screenshot every 10 minutes or checks to make sure your mouse is being moved. No, I don't want that level of surveillance. But then on the other hand, you have to engage people enough to keep them, in the loop of what's happening in the company and what's going on with the team. So I do think that we've kind of found that perfect balance where people have a chance to be engaged and they check in Slack and say, oh, I'm here to start my workday, but they have a lot of flexibility in exactly what their hours are. And then we also say, when you're off, whether you're just at lunch or you've signed out for the evening or it's a weekend or you've asked for vacation time off, we don't expect you to be answering Slack messages or responding to Asana comments or anything else. You're off. Like, go rest, come back refreshed.
I love that. I strongly believe in work-life balance. I know a lot of founders are probably listening to this going, no, that's not going to help you scale. But actually, there's a lot of science is now coming out to say you need that time to reset and refresh, and you do actually come back with fresh ideas, more creative thinking, and really just ready to hit the ground with more strategic thinking as well. So I strongly believe in that. And I agree with you. I think micromanaging, if you're micromanaging, you've probably got the wrong person on the team. They should just be hired to do what they're, hired to do.
Yes, hire adults and treat them like adults.
Exactly. I'm actually doing an interview in about 2 hours, so I'm going to selfishly ask you a question.
Sure.
What is one interview question that has been a game changer for you that you find works really well at kind of determining whether this person is a good fit or not?
We do always ask people what other things they might be interested in doing aside from the role that we're explicitly hiring them for, which I think is an interesting thing just to see, like, oh, we're hiring this developer, but he's kind of interested in UX and marketing, or which is helpful for a small team to have help on extra things. So we always ask that just as part of our interview process, and we've gotten some really great answers. And then we've had people, make some really nice contributions kind of outside of their strictly defined role for the company as well.
I love that. I'm totally going to steal that in about 2 hours. That would be my first question. I think you're right. It kind of opens up what else could they contribute to in the business, but then you're also giving them something that they enjoy doing, so they're more likely to stick around and be happy at work.
Hopefully. Yeah,
Yeah,
we try to match up people to what they like to do. Of course, there's always something that needs to be done that nobody likes,
of
but
course. Yeah.
the balance.
That's life. Um, Coming back to marketing, so that was your, I think, third hire, fourth hire, maybe. But what? I
Third, yeah.
mean, I think before that, and also, scaling after that, what have been some of the marketing channels that you have found have been the most effective?
We have tried quite a few things, marketing wise, and we did have to hire for that role because neither Nathan or I is naturally like a self-promotional kind of person. We both kind of hate doing it. So we've tried a whole bunch of stuff, done social media campaigns and click advertising and
Yeah.
product hunt and all of those kinds of things. But I think The two things that we have found that work pretty reliably is first getting our products included in directories of different kinds. So for example, if your product works with Stripe, right? Stripe has a big directory of all of the apps and services that integrate with Stripe. So to get listed in that, that has actually been really helpful. And I think we've been surprised sometimes at how many people find us through those kind of directories. So we do pay attention to those, and whenever one of the partners or third-party services that we use offers that, we try to get included. And then the other thing that we have found that works pretty reliably is actually getting out and putting ourselves in front of people. So doing things like this, like going on a
Yeah.
podcast, giving presentations at meetups, giving talks at conferences. I think it gives people a chance to get to know you and to hear, your philosophy behind what you're doing and who you are as a person. And if that's somebody that they resonate with, then they're happy to come and check out what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I hope anyone listening today can check out NSquared, and hopefully that gets you some nice new customers. Go to podcasts. It's interesting that you said directories. I guess it's kind of when I was just, as you were talking, I was just thinking, it's kind of you're getting other companies saying that this company is good to work with. You're kind of getting that partnership and that validation, and I guess they're more likely to trust you, and trust is a big factor in choosing who you want to work with at the end of the day. So that's really interesting. I always try and kind of encourage a lot of my clients to look into partnership opportunities. I always think that's the best way to scale.
Yeah, it's been really helpful. And sometimes those directories have a lot of hoops to jump through, but I think we found that it's worth it.
Yeah, that's good to know. What other strategies have you found have worked well in scaling your customer base?
Um, we are customer support, trying to offer the absolute best customer support that we have. And if you look at most of our reviews, they are mostly not on the products, but on the support team.
Yeah.
Just raving about our support team. So that's definitely one thing. I think people often contact our support team with some pretty low expectations given experiences that they've had elsewhere, and are often really pleasantly surprised. We try to collect and track lots of data. So that's part of Nathan's automation obsession, and one of our products as well is we try to really keep tabs on leading indicators and track how people are doing through onboarding and how are they doing on the next thing that we want them to do, so that we can identify all the places that we have a leaky bucket where we're losing people. So we're really careful about tracking that and just going along and fixing all of those things, which makes people happier.
Yeah.
And then more likely to tell other people about things. And we try to avoid making big decisions on our products just based on gut feelings. Like we try to go with the objective data over time, and the automation wherever possible, of course, and then looking for all of those like mutually beneficial partnerships and joint ventures and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that your focus is on customer service and customer satisfaction. I've actually had a couple of guests on the podcast that specifically have created a SaaS around customer satisfaction. One that comes to mind was Lee Hong from Day Said, and some of the advice she was giving is, a lot of companies, they'll send out maybe an annual email to say, hey, your service is, the product's coming up for renewal, just make sure your credit card's ready for that. And you don't even know if the customer's had a positive experience at that stage.
Yeah.
So she was suggesting, checking in on a more regular basis, not sending like 20 questions, in the that annual email that goes out, but maybe sending one question every month just to learn more and more about your client, how they're using the product, what you kind of collecting that data, like you said. I think that's very important.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. We do send out an email about 3 months in to just check in and say, hey, how are things going? And there's two links in the emails, like they're going great. That takes them to one place, and oh, things aren't so good. I'm not happy, which lets them talk to our support team. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's a good strategy. Yeah, I think it certainly helps. Was it, I think Jason Lemkin, who's a author of best-selling author in the SaaS space, he said customer retention is where 90% of the revenue is. So I think, having that customer retention, the loyal customer base, but also, they end up being your advocates and referring a lot of business back to you, which I think is a good way to scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy customers are the best customers.
For sure. Um, Coming back to women in tech and specifically women in leadership as well, what advice would you give to women in tech now who are looking to start their own company? Maybe they're talking to VCs at the moment. Maybe they're looking for co-founders. Maybe they're just, scared about branching out on their own in this world. What advice would you give them?
So I would say that I personally had dreams to start my own business from the time I was a child, and there aren't any entrepreneurs in my family at all. So to my family, that seemed like a huge risk and very scary. And I think I let that influence me. And probably my biggest regret in my life is that I did wait so long to start my business. Um, so I would say if it's something that you want to do, just go for it. Just do it. um, like people often think that there's security in a 9 to 5 job, but there's not.
No.
There's absolutely not. Ask anybody who's been laid off in the
Yeah.
last few months. There's that security is an illusion, and you're better off if you're going to be, working 40 hours every week or more. Wouldn't you rather that be toward your own thing, like building
Mm.
your own thing? And I think one thing I'd like to remind women of is that as a woman in tech, you have a unique perspective and a different set of strengths, and to go ahead and embrace those. I think sometimes women feel a lot of pressure to conform and act like everybody else, which is a little bit hard when everybody else around you is a guy. So
Yeah.
I actually had the opposite reaction, and like when I was working in companies, it had never been my personality before or since, but I became super girly, and my whole cubicle was pink. I had a pink keyboard and pink everything and Hello Kitty everywhere. Just to say, like, no, I am different from all the rest of you. We are not the
Love
same.
that.
And then I would say also that you really, really like something I think women in general struggle with is to put yourself first and to take care of yourself.
Mm,
But you
yeah.
absolutely have to do that. Nobody else is going to take care of you. You have to
Yeah.
practice self-care, which is not just getting manicures and taking bubble baths, but actually taking care of your health at a really basic level and getting exercise and eating healthy food and getting enough sleep and staying hydrated and very basic things.
I love that. I couldn't agree more with that. It's put your own oxygen mask on first, right? There's a reason they teach that
Yes.
in planes.
Yes.
Um, I think that's such good advice. I think you're right. Like women are more likely to want to conform when compared to men, which is probably why there's more male tech founders. We're more likely to kind of, want to be liked by society. And so we follow what people expectations are or our family's expectations are. I was lucky enough that, I do have entrepreneurs in my family, so it was kind of a no-brainer for me to just do it. I was
Yeah.
also lucky enough to do it at a very young age, so I kind of had very minimal risk compared to what I would have now, where, with kids and a mortgage and all that kind of stuff. But I think you're right. You should just go for it. Just don't be scared to fail. You can only learn from it. And I think what you end up regretting the most in life is the things that you didn't do rather than the things that you did.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm going to end the podcast with one final question around accessibility because I think this is an important kind of trend that's happening at the moment. I love that, it's becoming more and more important in the eyes of society and the world and, with compliance as well. What do you think is the future of accessibility and maybe even things that you're seeing in, web and app development at the moment? Where do you think that's headed? What should companies be thinking about when building their next one?
Yeah. So I did mention earlier, more and more countries are passing laws requiring accessibility. The EU has one that goes into effect next year. The
Right.
US just made a big ruling that goes into effect over the next 2 to 3 years, and lots of other countries are following suit. So it will definitely become more of a focus, I think, because it's being required. And will get to a point where accessibility will just be expected by default instead of it being this kind of extra thing that only some companies do. Um, I I think we'll see more companies with, there's a term that we use in accessibility called shift left. So you want to, a lot of times when a company very first starts thinking about, oh, we need to make our products accessible, they go to something they've already built and try to kind of bolt on accessibility at the very end. But like there's a accessibility advocate named Lainey Feingold who has her saying that you can't put the chocolate chips in the cookie after it's baked. So that doesn't work. So shifting left means that you're putting accessibility considerations into your development process earlier.
Mm,
And ideally, you're putting them in from the very, very beginning when you're first thinking about the requirements and doing your initial wireframes and planning out that very beginning phase, that you're going to start thinking about accessibility then. And then it's going to be built into the process all along. And that is actually the most efficient way to do it. That ends up being only a teeny bit more expensive and taking only a tiny bit more time than if you build something entirely and then go back and try to make it accessible. It can double or triple the investment that you've got into that product. So finding ways to have continuous testing throughout your development life cycle, training your team and making sure that you're fostering that kind of inclusive company culture that lets people think about accessibility that way. And then, of course, in 2024, I would be remiss if I didn't say AI
of
for
course.
accessibility, of course. So far, I haven't seen anything super promising with AI or machine learning in the accessibility space,
Mm,
but there is a lot of promise there. I think both on the side of assistive technology that will help people to access platforms and services, but I think also more toward accessibility testing and making sure that products are accessible.
amazing. Natalie, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. I've certainly learned a lot in terms of, advice for anyone out there looking to start their own thing or even, in sales and marketing of a corporation, just some tips that they could take away from this conversation today. But thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to meet you.
It was a pleasure to meet you too. Thank you for having me.